Oh, yes, we are live. That was quick. It is Friday, and as you can see, I've been caught in my heels. This is the Friday Bulletin on Axon with me, Laura Bradburn, and I'm joined, as always, by Tony Haggerty. How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, Laura, yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. A big week again. Big result last night. I'll try and be positive today about it, even though I was broadly positive last night. But there are multiple issues to discuss last night, not least the injuries that we sustained, as you'll see in the banner there, but we'll get to that. We are also joined by Alan Morrison, who is Celtic by Numbers on Twitter and also appears on the Huddle Breakdown podcast, which transmits weekly. And I believe you'll be recording another episode today, Alan. Is that right? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm well, Laura. Hi, Tony. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'll be on air later today. I'm not sure if it's live. The boss will work that one out. It's too technical for me.
Alan, have you compiled an expected injury list yet?
Expected. I'm still trying to. I run out of ink compiling the actual.
Yeah.
That's very true,
Yeah. If I understand these expected stats, anything, we're pretty much reaching one per player or something like that. I don't know, but we'll get into that in due course. Tony, I'll come to you first. You obviously did, as is your full-time job, did your player ratings for the Celtic Way last night.
Yeah.
To start off on a positive note, I would imagine, I didn't get a chance to read the report, but I would imagine it was pretty complimentary for most of the players on the pitch last night.
I was complimentary, but a lot of people say that I gave them kind of low marks. I toyed with the idea of giving the likes of Urhoghide and Welsh and Scales 8, but I think no player got above a 7, only because whilst it was a decent performance, I thought there was no particular standouts in the team. So I guess it's just down to your opinion who you thought had a better game than others. But I was complimenting in the sense that I thought they did very well. You know, I looked at the game and I would have found it really hard to pick out a personal man in the match in it. As I say, it was mostly the 7s. But I was impressed by the likes of Urhoghide and Scales and even Shaw and Welsh doing well to score his first European goal. And also Henderson, you know, that wonderful moment in sport when Mikey Johnson and squares the ball to you and Henderson, two academy graduates, former academy players, teammates. So these things don't go unnoticed. But I was maybe a bit meagre with my marks, you know, as I'm getting dug up today. But it's my professional opinion. I won't change that. That's how I saw it. Other people will see it differently. I thought it was a great team performance without any individual shining above others, as you usually get in a game. And that was reflected in the match. But as I say, I did toy with the idea of giving Urhoghide and Welsh and Scales 8s, because I thought out of them all that they were, I guess, the 3 that impressed me most, but they all get 7s, so maybe I should be a wee bit more kind moving forward.
Kindness is not the name of the game. Honesty is, I think, and that's what we'll do. But you can be kind and be honest at the same time, right?
Yeah,
I take on board what you're saying about the team performance outweighing any kind of individual performance, and that's something that I want to get into a little bit later, talking about this system that Ange's trying to implement and how it seems to be bleeding throughout the club. But we'll get on to that. Alan, before we go into the details, as I know you like to do, what was your overall view of the game? I mean, unquestionable that it was an enjoyable match. It was back and forth, it was up and down, all that stuff. But what was your overall view of the performances that you saw?
Yeah, no, it's a thrilling game of football first and foremost. I think that's probably the standout. And as have all Celtics games been in this group. You know, very rare for both teams to have expected goals over 2 in the same game. So from an attacking point of view, you know, stood toe to toe with what was still a very good Betis team, and you know, they had a couple of 21-year-olds, Lainez, the Mexican winger, Miranda, the left back, but otherwise, these are all players that are trying to get into a Betis team that are third in La Liga. They they're trying to impress Pellegrini, their manager, and they brought on some of the 18 later in the game as well. So I think there's a huge number of positives for the way that what was. I wouldn't even call it a B team. To me, it was nearer a C team, to be honest. In terms of if you think about where we'll end up if we look back on this in a year's time when Postecoglou's had, let's say, 2 or 3 transfer windows to shape the squad, I suspect there'll be a lot of players that played last night that will represent the highlight of their Celtic career. And so that I think for that team to put in that performance against that quality of opposition, I know the group was done, but they wanted to win. They've won 5 games in a row. They've got momentum. They're trying to, as I say, to build towards a proper series, La Liga challenge. So they were looking to win that game. So I think great credit to those players last night for what they achieved.
The manager said that, Alan, after the game, that those Celtic players that won that game will always have that in their memory banks. And I think he was alluding to what you were saying as well just there about that it might be as good as it gets, but they took on a very good side and they won, and nobody will be able to take that away from them. So yeah, I agree with that completely. That to beat a team of that calibre is still a decent scalp to claim in European competition.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing we know about Ange, it's that he picks his words carefully. There will be no mistake in him saying what he said there, and I think that gives you everything you need to know about the potential futures of some of the players that were in the team last night. Having said that, there were a few that I still think will make him second guess himself slightly, and maybe say that there's more of a future there for some of them than we thought. 9 points, obviously, coming out of a Europa League. We're almost unlucky not to have qualified. We have gone out in a very Celtic manner. We've got more points in our group than some of the qualified teams in other groups. I believe there's a couple going through on 7 points. So
I think there was 4 groups, Laura. 4 groups, I think. If Celtic had been in with 9 points, they would have qualified. So that's quite a high ratio.
So unlucky, but I think we gave a good showing of ourselves anyway. Let's break down the team sort of individually or by section, I suppose. Some of the biggest changes in some of the area or a certain area of the pitch where there was players playing together who you're almost certain had never played together before, Tony, was the defence. You had Bain in goal, you had Scales, you had I'm forgetting now, Urhoghide, Beaton and Welsh. It was, considering the lineup there, I think most people thought that we were on a course for a hiding looking at that defence. I don't think they gave us particularly bad showing of themselves as a group, did they?
No, they didn't. I mean, there was a point in the first half where Real Betis seemed to cut them open at will for a small spell, and you got increasingly worried. But that team's been cobbled together. They will not have much time to work on anything, shape or anything. I mean, the message was go out there, grab that opportunity and enjoy it. And they've come off the park, as Alan said, having beaten Real Betis. That's it. You chalk that up. That's as good an experience as it gets. You say people, what do they learn from that? You'll learn a lot from that.
Yeah.
You're a right good team who could slickly pass the ball around, and you might chase shadows for certain parts of the game. But I don't think anybody who was in the defence last night didn't cover them. I won't say, not cover themselves in glory, but they were decent. They stood up to a right test, and Betis wanted to win the game. They were throwing everything at Celtic at the end. They withstood that. And for debutants like Urhoghide and Shaw, and the more you see of Scales, the more you're impressed. Alan will be elaborating some stats on these guys, but at one point Urhoghide was charging up the park like Didier Agathe, wasn't he? Did I say to my manager, whatever? It was Didier Agathe-esque, the way he whipped the ball across. And I think when you looked at guys like Urhoghide, you saw some raw material there. It needs hammered and chiselled and panel beaten, but there was some raw material there that you can work with. Again, Alan will give some positive stats on that. But you look at players and you think, because you saw him in pre-season and he looked really, really suspect. And last week there was times when positionally you thought maybe suspect, but he was certainly a lot better player. And Ange touched upon that these guys have been training every day, even if they're not playing, they are up to speed. They know what the first team are doing. They're in and around it. So when they get that chance to slot in, then the message is the same. Do what you're doing. Do what they guys are doing. And I think they all did. Scales in particular, I just like Scales. I like his attitude, I like his effort, I like his application. I just like the way he goes about his business. Charging around that park there against top-notch Spanish opposition and wasn't scared of them in any. Reputations meant nothing. And he looks a comfortable, solid, accomplished player. And also since he came in, he looks like somebody who's grasped the nettle and grasped the mantle of, right, high-intensity training, high-tempo get, right, check, right, okay, and listening to the manager. You could see that. So that's what pleases me greatly. The fact that they won the game was an absolute bonus. And you can't take... You have to give them credit for that. It was a right good, as I said at the start, decent team performance, real team ethic there. And they deserved that bit of luck at the end they got with the one Skelton the crossbar. And to finish it on a high, they finished the campaign on a high. And 9 points. I've heard that before with Celtic, 9 points somewhere there.
Yeah, I have a vague recollection of doing that against Juventus, I think.
Yes. Where a certain manager was screaming shocking at a certain penalty decision. But they seem to do it the hard way, don't they, Celtic? And seem to accumulate a lot of points. But I guess that goes back to the standard and calibre of opposition they were playing. That was a real tough group. And to get 9 points is quite a creditable score.
Absolutely. As Daniel Farrelly commenting on YouTube, and remember everybody, you can comment on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, wherever you're watching. Daniel Farrelly, who has been very active in the comments in the last few days, quite enjoyed her putting Brian in his place a couple of times, which was quite fun. But Daniel Farrelly says very composed, Scales comes across as, and I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay him in a defence where we have struggled for composure this season. I can think of a few names which I'm not going to say because I don't want to get on anybody's back, but I think I can think of a few names where that composure has not been as evident, and yet every time Scales has come into the team, he has seemed to bring that composure and that sense of calm to the defence, which was really good. But Alan, I'll come to you. Do you have anything for us stats-wise on the defence, on how they performed last night, on who was a particular standout from that back four, or Scott Bain, as you vehemently defended the last time you were on the show with
us? Yeah. So listen, I mean, also I think I need to provide again the context that it was kind of square pegs as well, because Urhoghide is a centre back. At Wednesday, he was always a centre back, so right back was a bit outside of his comfort zone. Bitton, as we know, is not a centre back, and Scales actually, I know he's comfortable at left back, but he's played predominantly over the last 2-3 seasons in the League of Ireland. He's either been the left centre back in a 3, or he's been a wing back. So to play the left back role was again a little bit outside his comfort zone. So all of those things, I think, just helped to add, and the fact that obviously there's no level of understanding between the 4 defenders, but I think to take them one by one, I mean, Urhoghide, so as you probably know, I live in Sheffield, so I spoke to a lot of Wednesday fans about Urhoghide and Shaw. Urhoghide, they were pretty gutted about losing. They saw him as being a very positive prospect, very raw, and I think we can see that. I would say he grew into the game, right? So I was worried about him for a lot of the first half. Positionally, I'm not sure he was in the right place. When he got the ball at his feet, you're sort of thinking, what is going to happen next? A few times, but he actually grew into the game, definitely, and got more and more comfortable. And I think his physical attributes, his pace, his power, his strength, helped him to recover from a few situations that could have been really bad, which is obviously, compared to fullbacks like Ralston and Taylor, that athleticism and physicality and speed is something that we're sadly lacking in the team as a whole. So I think that was a welcome dimension that he brought there, and as I say, his confidence grew. So I was really, really pleased for him. Scales is an interesting player on the other side. I do like the look of him. Not enough data yet to sort of talk authoritatively about his defensive attributes, positioning, anticipation, that kind of thing. Just don't have enough data. Last night he was put under a lot of pressure, and his first 90 minutes for Celtic, and he was really, really struggling fitness-wise from about 70 minutes on. And Joachim had the run of him. 40-year-old Joachim had the run of that right side in the last 20. Well, I say last 20 minutes, last 30 minutes of the game. So that and he was kind of, I don't know where he was for that second goal. It wasn't even Mikey Johnson was covering the whole of that left side. So there's definitely a lot there in terms of fitness, conditioning to last 90 minutes at that level that he was going to have to work on. But what I liked about him was that 20 of his 43 completed passes were in the opposition half. So I think both Urhoghide, who again, he's a centre-back, so rampaging right back is probably a little bit outside of his skill set. But I think both players fitted into what Postecoglou's instructions and style and structure would have been, which I thought was a great credit to both of them. He ended up with, I think, 0.3 of expected assists from one key pass. He lost 2 out of 6 duels, but some of that might have been in the opposition half. So as I say, his defensive numbers, I don't have enough information for. But what I like about him is, and I'll look at this for any player, is he looks comfortable receiving the ball. His body shape is good. He opens his body up. He's not closed like some. He's facing the play. He looks technically comfortable. And again, he's 6'3". He's a big physical, reasonably athletic player. Not as much pace probably as Urhoghide, but that physicality again is something that's hugely lacking from this team. And then off the centre backs, Welsh was very tidy, just very safe. Completed 98% of his passes. Got quite a few clearances and headers, and just looked safe and competent. Welsh's passing is something which last season really sort of improved as the season went on. His ability just to break that first line is something which is very valuable and needed in this system. So yeah, for the young guys, I think it was some positives there for the back four.
And that's interesting, Alan, because I spoke to Welsh in the fan media press conference, and I asked him the one attribute that had improved in his game since Ange came in. And that's what he said, he's passing. So he said that Ange had helped improve in passing because that quickness and style and tempo and high intensity of the play. He banged on about that, but that was the one attribute he said had improved the most.
And well, I don't think he'll be the only player either that'll have improved his passing.
No, I mean, I think you 48 passes was probably the most in the team. As I say, to complete those at 98% against a team that's really going at you, pressing high, I think was good credit to him. And the fact that I didn't really notice him much when I was watching the game in sort of full on fan mode means that he probably had a pretty safe game. When I go back and watch it again and collect the data and all that sort of thing, I can, other things might emerge.
Yeah, there's plenty to discuss, and I think the encouraging thing that I'm seeing a couple of people talk about, somebody made the comment, it's unfortunately scrolled past, but made the comment about, what a change we've had where, many of the players on the pitch last night, the defence especially, we would have been, very, very nervous about seeing them in a lineup, whereas I think what we've seen, at least from the defence anyway, is that if any one of them individually came into a stronger defensive lineup, you could probably trust them at this point to put in a good performance, and that's the least you can say about it, which is good. But and I know we're getting loads of comments about Kyogo and asking about what's happening with him. I personally don't have any information about that. We will get to talking about the forward line, but I like to keep things organised. So let's move on to the midfield. Tony, I'll come to you first on the midfield. I was actually talking to my brother about this morning, and his words to me were, I wouldn't have expected a midfield of McCarthy, Shaw, and the name's gone out of my head. Who was the other midfielder? McCarthy, Shaw, and Beaton to have performed as well as they did. But they did do really well last night. They were quite physical, but not too overly physical. Sorrow was the other one, sorry. Sorrow was perhaps a little bit headless chicken with his tackles, as he has a want to be. But what did you make of the midfield? Were you impressed by any of them? What was your overall thoughts of how they controlled the game from the middle of the park?
Listen, you saw the midfield and you did feel the worst, didn't you? You fear the worst of sorrow would be the headless chicken and do something rash, do something stupid. He's a VAR TV replay instant away from possibly getting a red card, but it was never a flailing elbow. But it was a needless, fending off of somebody, which got the referee to make a question. And once he's booked, he walks that disciplinary tightrope, doesn't he? Because
Yeah.
he's going to do something, he's going to be rash. He's just a rash footballer and needs to engage sometimes, his own football brain, It's just something that it's in him, I don't know what's the matter with him, and don't know if it's frustration, because this time last year he came into the side and everybody started to say he was looking every inch a footballer.
Mm-hmm.
And some guys just can't maybe handle the fact that it's not happened for them. There's a footballer there, but he needs to learn that he can't run about, charging about like a raging bull, and he can't win every ball. You can jockey, you can joust, you can harry, you can chase. You can't win every ball that comes to his man, and I think he has to get that in his head because he wants to win every ball. So he persistently fouls and ends up in the book, and it's usually early that he ends up in the book. Shaw, I thought Shaw was just tidy and effective and decent. Put the foot up and then tried to give the ball to footballers whenever he could. He was effective and efficient without being flashy, and I think Alan will be able to tell you that there. But another one who got taken off at the optimum time because his tank was gone. His tank was got. He'd given everything, so which is fine. He showed he can do it and he can compete at that level. Great. McCarthy, I just worry about. I really do. Again, he was. I it was 60, 62 minutes that McCarthy was. They were saying in the commentary that he was spent. And I feel for him, I really do, but I think he has to get over this, injury prone or not being able to see out 90 minutes if he's to become, a regular contributor and a regular in the Celtic team. I think Celtic fans are frustrated for him, not frustrated with him. Just want to get to the bottom of why he can't last 90 minutes and why he keeps kind of breaking down. And again, last night he was quietly efficient as well. Considering they were zipping it about a bit, I did fear the worst at one point. See that particular spell in the game where 40-year-old Joaquin was running riot, as Alan said, and Lainez was causing all sorts of bother. I just think it was a matter of time. So I'm pretty astonished that we won that game with that starting 11 and that starting midfield in particular, because there wasn't much in terms of creativity there.
No.
So that's a big thing for me. So when I saw the midfield, I was like, okay, who's going to play the killer pass? Who's going to score from that midfield? But so there's all sorts of things. But again, they all competed very well, and they were up against a decent side. So I think you have to give them credit. Sometimes it's about digging in and doing some dirty work and being bailed out by your forward offensive thinking teammates, and that's what happened last night. They all did a solid and steady job. Again, I go back, it was a team collective rather than individuals standing out for me last night, and it was a typical Ange team performance, real work ethic, high energy, high intensity, which some can do for certain amounts of time.
Yeah.
The 70 minutes, and then the others come on. The likes of Turnbull, McGregor came on to shore everything up and just sort of make sure that the Celtic could get a result or hang on to that result.
Yeah, David Bradley commenting on YouTube is agreeing with you that he felt McCarthy was off it. I don't know that I would go so far as to say that McCarthy was off it. I think, like you said, he started the game well, and it was only around 60, 65 minutes that he started to, tire and start, pulling at sore muscles and that kind of thing. It just makes you wonder, why were Crystal Palace so happy to let him go, not offer him a new contract? Did they see this in the offing, that kind of thing? So, and let's not forget his former Hamilton teammate James McArthur remains in the Premier League and is still putting in performances every week. So there were opportunities there for, somebody who kept up that standard.
Alan spoke about it the last time, Alan. It's all about rest and recovery, isn't it, really? With players. You spoke about that, about the 2 and 3 day thing, didn't you? You know, two minimum, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And I'm sure that's a contributory factor to injuries. I think to pick up your point, Laura, on McCarthy, I mean, they had the opposite problem to what Postecoglou's got at Celtic in terms of, I think they had about 6 or 8 midfielders that could all do that kind of job.
Yeah.
And he was just essentially surplus to requirements there. Actually, McCarthy, it's very difficult. I've learned with him now, or learning, that it's very difficult to judge his performances watching the game in real time, because the things that he does well tend not to go noticed. So he won actually 8 out of 10 duels, and I think with 12 recoveries. So recoveries are a good proxy for right place, right time, picking up the loose balls, essentially being there when the balls. He probably led the team in recoveries with 12, I think, as well. So he did those pieces, which are classic number 6 type jobs, pretty well. But I think he's one of those players, and I know, Laura, you're a big Championship Manager fan. If we're still allowed to talk about that. If you think about Championship Manager and you think about a profile of these players that have got, like, out of 20 attributes, they might have 4 or 5 that are like nearly 20, and then the rest are like really rubbish. That's James McCarthy, right? There's a certain skill set he's brilliant at, and it's going to be that breaking up play, being in the right place at the right time, and then shoveling the ball off to somebody else. But ask him to do anything beyond that, and I think it's beyond him. My take on him when I was watching him live was, oh my God, he's so slow. can somebody please just give him a bit of a push, make him move faster? But as I say, if you look at the stats, he kind of did that 6 covering job that well. But again, it's around, it's square pegs. You could argue that if you when the transfer window closed in August, I did a piece on Celtic by Numbers, and I rag status the central midfield as red. I saw it as the biggest issue in the squad, because what Postecoglou's system demands are 3 pretty athletic, dynamic midfielders that go up and down, very good at passing vertically, but also good at recovery and doing all the dirty stuff as well. And you could argue we do not have a single midfielder that fits that profile, not even Callum McGregor. Okay, so Rogic and Turnbull arguably are 10s. We don't have that number 8, and the 3 players that played last night are 6s, right? I don't actually know what Shaw is. When I spoke to Wednesday fans, they didn't know what he was. He's a kid that came in to a struggling team at Wednesday, and he was shuttled around. He played left back, he played centre back, he played centre mid, and he hasn't really got a settled position. Sorrow, as we know, did really well last season as a 6. His vertical passing was fantastic, and we didn't see a lot of that last night. So it was just it just highlights the chronic lack of depth in that absolutely fundamental part of the pitch. I think fair play. I think they all kind of they all tried their hearts out, no doubt. Shaw actually completed 18 of his 20 passes in the opposition half. I thought that was excellent in that respect. He won 8 duels and only lost 3. He's a big physical guy, right? But he's also very much like Sorrow. He's a red card waiting to happen. I think he was sent off twice in about 20 games for Wednesday. Wednesday fans say he just runs around the pitch clattering into people, and you saw a bit of that last night. So having him and Sorrow on the pitch, and both got booked. Sorrow probably, the problem with Sorrow is he draws attention to himself. Okay, the referee catches onto him very early, and he draws attention. Shaw didn't so much, but he's only 1 missed time tackle away from a red before he goes off. But these guys were put in a very difficult situation, doing jobs they're not familiar with doing. And I think they did a fantastic effort in trying to fit that system as best as their skill sets will allow. But McCarthy's never going to be a player that's comfortable playing the way that Postecoglou played. When he played at Palace, they had 3 midfielders, and their jobs were defensive. And the idea was to get the ball up to Zaha and Benteke as quickly as possible, and they just sat. And he's comfortable, and that's great, and he'll do a job like that. But you ask him to do a box to box role. That was McCarthy when he was at Hamilton, or 22-year-old James McCarthy. It's not 31-year-old James McCarthy.
No, certainly isn't.
The more we speak, I'm going back to my original point that it's a miracle we won this game. with that team.
Well, it is actually. I think it'll go down as one of the greatest performances by a Celtic team in the context of the selection.
Well, I'll tell you something, Tony. You're obviously more focused than me because you're thinking about how a miracle it is we won the game. But every time Alan says the word duel, I'm just thinking of Sorrow in like Gladiator on a Saturday night with a Kyogo sticks just battering Joaquin or something like that with a Kyogo stick. But that's one for the 90s kids out there. And the other thing as well is Championship Manager, yes, a big fan, but as everybody knows, if you give somebody the correct role, they only need 4 or 5 good stats to perform that role properly.
Absolutely.
They don't need the rest. So, but Alan, you'll know that better than most.
Sadly, yes.
Looking at the front line, Patrick Bantering Patrick Bantering earlier in the comments said Jota for him was the biggest miss of the team. Certainly, just in general, the front line was one that going into the game, I thought we were going to struggle with, perhaps more than we did. The biggest surprise package, and I'll come to you first on this, Alan, just because Tony's had the first word on the last few. But Ayeti, for me, was a surprise package. Yes, he only lasted 25 minutes, unfortunately, because of injury, but he was certainly, for want of a better phrase, putting himself about a bit and seemed a good physical presence up front, was winning the ball high up in the pitch, putting pressure on their defence. What did you make of Ayeti, and is it a case of misfortune that he happens to have, got himself injured when he might have been able to establish himself in the team?
Yeah, I mean, striker was the other red flag I flagged at the end of August, and here we are. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you look at that team, I would bracket Ayeti with probably Sorrow in the bracket of senior players, seniorish. I mean, they're both young guys, actually. Sorrow's only 23, Ayeti's only 24. But I think they're players that have probably been given a chance by Postecoglou, and I think he's decided they're not for him. So they played last night because there was literally nobody else to play. He didn't do a lot on the in terms of actions, on the ball actions. There wasn't a lot there to sort of pick up on, unfortunately, in the brief time he was on. I mean, it's a feature of Ange's teams that the strikers really don't get involved in play at all. Right. The number of times that even Kyogo touches the ball is incredibly small. I always used to joke about Lee Griffiths that he used to have more shots than completed passes. It's a bit of a geek joke, that one, and I know you're not laughing because it's not funny.
I'm sure there's folk in the comments will get that one.
I'm sure people are just like, "Oh, that's brilliant." But it's very unusual for a player to have more shots at goal than actual completed passes. If you think about it, a pass is the most common action on the field. About 75% of all actions on the field are passes. So anyway, I'll stop now. But yeah, but Kyogo is involved almost less to a lesser extent than Lee Griffiths used to be when he was the main striker. And I don't know that that's necessarily the style of Kyogo. I think it's just the style of how Ange sets his teams up. So Ayeti really didn't do a lot before he went off injured, and of course we're now in an absolute mess because of that. But then with Giakoumakis being injured, we're down to a player that I don't think Ange trusts or wants anyway. So that's not a great situation either. So I don't know what to say. It's just a crap situation.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much the top and bottom of it. If there's one positive to take out of it, you've got Kevin Graham laughing anyway. I would say don't apologise for your geeky jokes. I love every single one of them, Tony, looking at it, it's always fascinates me when Alan comes on because there he is, he's laughing anyway, which is unusual for our Kev, but I'll give him it. It always fascinates me when Alan comes on because he takes what is my emotional response to how a player performs and puts it into a much more sort of objective context. That being, for me, Ayeti, when he was on the pitch, performed well, even if the stats suggest that the impact wasn't there. There you go. Daniel Mick says, I don't mind the stats. It's interesting sometimes. Wow.
If you look at the dictionary under what does damned by faint praise mean, that's the sentence that you'll see.
I was going to say, the phrases I don't mind and sometimes is not something that you want in there. But thank you, Daniel Mick, for that. We appreciate
you so
it.
much. Thank you.
But Tony, Ayeti was fine. He was, you know, I think certainly what I saw from him last night that I've not seen in some of the other performances was at least a willingness to try. That is what I would give him.
Yeah, I was just about to say, beware of geeks bearing jokes. Is that what we're saying?
Hey, very good.
I included something that, by the way, Alan. All right. Yeah, I mean, listen, you watch with our eyes. That's what we do. Alan dissects it he tells you himself, he watches it and then forms the data in a different kind of way. But it's good to have that, if I've said that, juxtaposition of both, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Your emotional and your visual response to how a player's playing, and then you get some scientific statistical data to say, well, actually, contrast it with this. So that's how it's become more and more prevalent in football, and more questions are thrown up around it. It stimulates brilliant debate, right? Because you've just said there, you thought Ajeti did this, Ajeti did that. I'll say, well, actually, he did the square root of Sodal. You know what I mean? So, but I
Sat
think
me down is what he did.
No, he did. No. I mean, listen, and there's limitations to the data because, you know, we're the really holy grail of all this is the sort of more tracking based data. So it's because players literally spend 89 minutes without the ball, right? So what are they doing in those 89 minutes, and is it good or is it bad? And what does good look like? What does not good look like, right? So, you know, we're as I keep saying, you know, the data that we have today are the stars, but all the black stuff in between is the stuff that we don't get to see.
Yeah.
And correct, and I agree with that comment that's just come in. It does lead to it's all good. So it gives you kind of the full picture, doesn't it? You know, but you'll stand by what you think you're seeing.
Yeah.
You know, the stats just gives you that kind of.
I mean, listen, I'm disappointed for Ajeti. I think he looks like a player who is a penalty box striker who's got a fantastic one-touch finish. He's actually a really good finisher. To me, should be perfect for this system, but it's not worked out. I don't know whether it's attitude. You know, some rumors there, but you know, whatever it is, disappointed it's not worked out for him.
And the irony is, he almost scored last night by doing something that Ange loved. He chased a goal down, and the goal is
injured himself because he's not used to doing it.
Injured himself with oh my God! You know, a rude awakening. This is what he wants me to do. Can he do it for 90 minutes, let alone 25?
See, I told you, Andrew. That'll learn you.
He's coming off the stretcher going, why did you make me do this?
You know, and I know we're being flippant, but you know that, as you say, Darren, that is the way Ange wants his strikers to play. You have to be a buzz bomb along that front line and shut down, and you know, and as you say, you might not always touch the ball or be on the ball, but you are affecting what happens. You know, you're affecting the play. You're having an impact, shutting down. I mean, how many times do opposition defenders smash the ball off Kyogo? He was out for a throw-in.
Yeah, I mean, it's subtle things. If you think back to the Dundee United game at the weekend, or even the game last night, the number of times that the goalkeeper kicks the ball and it's a poor kick because of the pressure that they're under, and just that little split second of additional pressure makes the kick out imperfect, and then you're on to the counter press. And it's just little details, little margins.
Yeah, and talking of those little details and margins that can turn into big details and big margins, Tony, we were being a little bit flippant about the Ajeti injury, and obviously we wish him well, but the one that really stuck in the throat was Kyogo. Now I saw a lot of stick for the manager saying, you know, what's he doing bringing Kyogo on? I don't know about you, but I kind of felt that was a bit of a dead end to go down, because what else is he supposed to do? What did you make of him, that decision of him bringing Kyogo on, and obviously where does it leave us with that injury?
I don't want to sort of join in some kind of manager baiting, but he's not got anything wrong since he came into the club, in my opinion. I think he called it wrong last night. He could have put Willie Johnson on up front. I just think Kyogo shouldn't have been anywhere near the bench or the start or coming onto the park, only because there was a foreboding sense of doom about it all, wasn't it? People were predicting players are going to get injured See, you start predicting these things, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? And then Ajeti goes down, and then you see Kyogo warming up, and you're thinking, don't put him on, put Mikey Johnson on, just whatever you do, save this guy. He comes on and he gets injured, So I think the manager might hold his hands up at some point and say, you know what, maybe I did get that wrong. Yeah, what is he supposed to do? I get that. He's the main striker at the club. The guy that he put in his place got injured. So it's just a kind of like for like. But I just think with the December that we have and the hectic schedule, if Celtic won 3-2 last night, lost 3-2, it didn't matter, did it? I just think in the grand scheme of last night did not matter. And I just think a player like Kyogo shouldn't have been anywhere near it. And we're not being critical, but he has to accept the fact that he called that wrong last night. I've not queried his judgment since he came in at all. And I think supporters just feel really, really disappointed in the fact that if it is a hamstring, then it's 3 to 4 weeks and he's going to miss crucial games, and you've got a cup final coming up in 10 days, 11 days, 9 days, whatever it is. And you're missing several key players. My biggest concern is that if it's hamstrings, it's happening a lot, isn't it? Jota, Ajeti, Kyogo. That's a concern moving forward. But as I say, we all love the manager. We back him to the hilt. We hope the board backs him to the hilt. And again, I go back to Alan's point, it shows up the chronic lack of depth that we have in certain positions at the football club. That's for a start. But I don't know if Ange will be able to say anything that can kind of make up for last night in the decision to play Kyogo at any stage. I just felt he should have been rested completely.
It's an interesting point though there that the commenter brings up with players we've already lost to injury. It makes it harder to understand why Kyogo came on last night. And on one hand, I understand that, but on the other hand, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in that if we have a number of injuries, you are then limited at who you can bring on, and if Kyogo's still there, he's an option. But I wanted to ask Alan on this one. Sorry to put you on the spot with this, Alan, because I know it's not something that you might have prepared, but given your discussions previously about days rest and things like that, part of me wonders, just anecdotally, like Tony was saying about the number of hamstring injuries we're getting, whether there's a fundamental issue with the way we're training the players or with the backup medical staff at the club. Does it strike you from the numbers that you look at that the number of injuries we've got is a statistical anomaly, or is it just bad luck, do you think?
I doubt it's bad luck. So if you don't mind, I'll just cover Kyogo first. So hopefully people know that when the Postecoglou bus was a 2-seater Fiat Punto, I was on it, right? So from day one I've been 100%.
I was the other seat, Alan.
Yeah, there you go. You were driving. But he got it wrong last night, and he's going to have to hold his hand up and say that. I actually did a tweet where I didn't even realise that Kyogo was on the bench because mentally I didn't even want him to be on the bench. I thought he should have had the night off completely. Yeah. And it's not, and my training. A couple of things I try and bring to this from my own sort of life experiences. One is risk management, and second is just general analysis skills. So if you want to look for patterns, I'll give you this on Kyogo, right? Kyogo has only completed 90 minutes for Celtic 3 times, right? The first time he completed 90 minutes was at Ibrox in August, and he missed. He didn't play another league game until the 30th of September. The other 2 times he's played 90 minutes for Celtic were against Hearts and against Dundee United, i.e. the last 2 games. Now, I was told that Celtic have got software analysis capabilities that allow them through the monitors they have on the players to detect signals of when players are in the red zone in terms of their biometrics and their physiological indicators, etc. Are they getting is somebody I mean, and also, I'm not again. When I was watching Jota that game against was it Hearts? He went off or Aberdeen? I can't remember. You could see he wasn't running as freely, and I'm just thinking, if we've invested in the right sort of technology, the right medical support, and the right data, and then we're not using it, that's almost worse. I mean, this is something that over at Ibrox they've been using this. I think this is called Zone 7, or I can't remember what the name of it is. They're using the software for a couple of years, and they've had significantly fewer injuries. And actually, the Rangers are a good proxy to compare Celtic against, because obviously they've had a very similar schedule. They started Europe around about the same time. They've had pretty much the same number of games in the same pattern of, Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it might be. And if you look at their injuries this season, to your question, so Celtic, if you look at the first team squad, and I've taken out players like Christie, Edouard, Griffiths, who are not here anymore, and I've taken out like youngsters that have filled in. And again, if you just look at the first team squad, Celtic have lost the equivalent to 159 matches due to injury. What that works out as, it works out an average of 5.3 players per game. Every game, they're average of 5 players missing to select from. And if you look at the Rangers over the same period this season, they've lost 72. They're missing 2.5 players per game, half. Celtic got double the injury problems. Now, some of it might be just bad luck, but some of it, I'm sure, is because I know that they've been using up-to-date tech, up-to-date data to track the conditioning of players. And if Celtic are using it but not using it properly, and as I say, look at the patterns with Kyogo, then why not? And in terms of why is this happening, there's never one thing, right? There's going to be a multitude of factors that contribute. I do wonder whether, from Postecoglou's perspective, a learning for him is that he said it so himself. He just can't get over the number of games that Celtic are playing, and in every game you're playing at the same intensity. There's no sort of taking the foot off the gas. At Celtic, you have to play every game on the front foot, and whether he's underestimated the wear and tear on both training at the intensity, and Stephen Welsh spoke about this during the week, about the intensity that Celtic train at and then play a match at. Is that actually practical given the schedule and the cold weather and and the travel and the lack of recovery days, which are crucial, and all the international players that are jetting back here? You add all those things up, and I suspect he's going to have a bit of a sit down with his head of sports science and think: have we got this right? But also, has the club got the right culture and using the data and the information they actually do have to make smart decisions? Because last night was not a smart decision, and if you look at the patterns of usage of Kyogo, you could have seen that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Tony, because one thing I don't know about Australian or Japanese football is whether there's any portion of the calendar where the games are as congested as they are in the Christmas period in European football, certainly. Is it possible, do you think, that Ange has maybe not had to come up against this management of this congestion of fixtures and alter his training to suit? Is that maybe what he's suffering from at the moment?
Well, he made a point of mentioning the amount of games they were playing in such a short period was ridiculous, I think, wasn't it? Going back to Alan's point there about, but that's the way it is. It's pretty worrying if that's the case, that Celtic aren't using the science available to them. But what it does highlight is that this squad can't cope with that high-intensity training and high-intensity matches. The squad of players that they have, they just don't have enough people to cope, because they're not resting and recovering properly. They're being asked to go to the well and to drink out it again, and you can only go so many times. And I guess that's what's happened with Kyogo. He's been asked to go to the well once too often, and now he has come a cropper. But again, that could have been avoided by looking at the situation, looking at the evidence and the sports science and the stuff that's in front of you that Alan was talking about there and alluding to. So you have to utilise it in the best way possible. I mean, we're all supporters. You probably could have predicted that Kyogo would break down at some point this season, but you take that out of the equation by just limiting that last night, by not putting them in the squad at all, letting them sit in the stand and watch it, because it's a it's a nothing game. There didn't have to be any intensity to that, so or pressure in that situation. So, when you shoot yourself in the foot like that, it's more worrying. But I've just found that last few minutes from Alan pretty interesting, to be honest. I really do. I wasn't aware of it, so that's enlightening for me, So
but even without all that, it's basic risk management. You make a decision. What is the upside to my decision? What is the downside of my decision? And what is the likelihood that the downside is going to occur? Right? And on that basis, like you say to them, go and sit in the stand, wrap a big thick coat around you, and enjoy the game.
Because there was no reward to that risk management last night, was there at all?
No, apart
from winning the football match.
The only outcome was going to be negative.
Kyogo didn't actually contribute that much to what turned the game for Celtic was McGregor and Turnbull coming on and controlling the midfield.
Patrick Dolan on YouTube makes a good point. Alan also add in the lack of protection that our players are afforded by officials. Then it's amazing we're not worse off crunching tackles but not breaks yet. Tony, we were watching the game live last weekend at the charity weekender where David Turnbull was lucky not to break his leg against Butcher, appropriately named from Dundee United. And hopefully any injuries that we do have are down to our own mismanagement of the players, and it's something we can sort, and that we don't end up with serious injuries because of what's happening with the tackles being made against us. But that's probably a discussion for another day. In the meantime, we'll go on, Tony, and talk about the game against Motherwell that we've got coming up at Celtic Park on Sunday. Last time we faced Motherwell was at Fir Park back in October. We won 2-0 there. It was seen as a little bit of a turning point for us in the season, just because it wasn't, I don't remember it being the prettiest of wins, but it was a win nonetheless. What are your sort of worries, injuries aside, going into the match, or what are the positives that you see going into the match? We're playing against a Motherwell team who have had a somewhat up and down season, but more positive than negative, and are currently sitting 5th in the table.
I think I'm looking at Celtic's front three for Sunday, am I not?
Which I don't think any of us could name sitting here right now. So
correct. What I remember about that Fir Park game is Ange came away with that brilliant quote that we'll run our own race, mate, which I quite like. I was standing feet away from him when he said that. It was great. I was chuckling away. Tremendous. He said, I thought the league was finished, that kind of thing. So that was good. Yeah, listen, that's the headache that we now have, that the manager now has. For Sunday, who does he play? Do you go with, do you put Johnson, Abada or Forrest through the middle? You'll draft in some players from the B team to sort of give you your wide options. Nobody can say for certain now, because we don't know the extent or the prognosis of the injuries to Ajeti and Kyogo, but it's weeks. If it's hamstrings, you're 3 to 4 weeks minimum, with potential for a more lengthy layoff, depending on how bad it is. So you're looking just now, and you're kind of struggling to pick a main centre forward, aren't you? I'd be tempted to maybe go with James Forrest just because he has experience and can possibly lead the line. Or maybe Abada has been out of sorts and out of touch in the wide position, so maybe put him through the front. Maybe get his confidence levels back up, because he earlier he scored 4 and 7 when he came to the club, and now he's now got 7 and 30. So there's been a dip off there in terms of his goal return.
Yeah.
Try to go all Alan there, you know what I mean? He'll
2 assists last night.
But so he'll maybe relish the fact of going through the middle and try to get his confidence levels up if he can get a couple of goals. But we need to produce something on Sunday, because it's a crucial match. I mean, they're all crucial, but it's even more crucial now in terms of you're limited with your personnel, how you go about winning on Sunday, and you just need to find a way to win.
That's ultimately what it comes down to. Alan, it's going to be a difficult match for us, obviously, for a number of reasons, not least the injuries that we have. Do you think we've got enough in the tank to come out on top on Sunday?
So I'm going to be kind of upbeat on this one. I think Motherwell are, and the way that the Motherwell set themselves up will suit Celtic down to the ground. And the reason that I say that is there's a few teams in the league that, like Dundee United, that we played last week, who they adapt their style within a framework, but they adapt their style to suit the opponent that they're playing. Motherwell play 4-3-3 every game, and they play 3 up front every game. And the benefit is they've had a pretty settled team all season, quite with a few suspension problems, because they actually have the most yellow cards in the league by 7. 46 yellow cards and 3 sendings off as well in the league. So it's going to be that kind of game again. But they're going to play their 4-3-3. They're going to get the ball forward very directly, and they're going to try and get free kicks, corners, because from set plays they're a strong side. And that's the way they're going to play. And all their strikers are pretty effective. I think Watt's actually the top scorer in the league with 9 goals. Van Veen has actually got a higher expected scoring contribution than Watt. And Woolery is, although he's not contributed a lot in terms of goals and assists, he's by all accounts been a pretty effective player. So they'll aim to get the ball to their front 3 as often as possible. But the reason that I say I'm kind of optimistic is that when we've played Motherwell and they play this system, it's very easy to play through that first front 3. And once you've played through their front 3, you've then only got 7 players between you and the goal. And given the space that Celtic will have and the quality, especially, if you looked at the last game, both all McGregor, Rogic and Turnbull all had over 100 packing scores. So let me just break that down. So this is where you're measuring forward passes that take opponents out of the game. 100 is a pretty good score. They all beat that. So what that means to me is that they had plenty of space to be playing through balls, to be breaking lines. That plays directly into Celtic style. And what we've seen in the last couple of games, especially, is an even more aggressive vertical approach. McGregor's passing stats have gone through the roof in the last 2 games, and that through ball that he put for Turnbull's goal, and another one he put through for that Kyogo didn't quite score from in the last game. He's being more aggressive with his passing, and that has to come from the manager, because McGregor can be a little bit conservative sometimes. So I think the system that they play will feed into that. The fascinating thing about the game that we played against them, and it won't be any different because they'll play the same way, is that the fullbacks, again, in this 4-3-3, once you break that first press, they've then got 3 against 3 in the middle. And their midfielders have got a choice. And what Ralston absolutely ran riot against them in that game. He had the best attacking stats of anyone on the pitch that day. But the problem that we had was on the other side we had Bolingoli. Now Bolingoli is again provides quite a much. He's a much quicker, stronger physical player than Taylor, for example, or even Scales, and his passing from the back. His verticality of passing is better than those, but he's really ineffective in the final third. Very few, very low expected assists, very few crosses that were successful. So I think if we get the fullbacks right, that they're going to have that's going to be the most important position of the day against them. And Taylor generally does very well against this type of opponent at this level. And if we've got, again, Juranovic, I think it's tailor-made for those two, because what will happen, I think, is we'll get overloads out wide and create danger there. And with that combined with the 3 midfielders being able to, I think, of a far greater quality than their midfield 3, and it will be one-on-one, I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to give them a lot of trouble.
I think based on that assessment, we definitely will, and I think a big advantage of the other night, or last night, I should say, even though we've come away with some injuries, is that there are players coming back into the team, Juranovic, Taylor, McGregor, that kind of thing, who will be fresher than they otherwise might have been if they'd had to play that game last night, so it's an advantage. Just to close out the show, Tony, I wanted to get your thoughts on, just to go back to the Europa League things for a little bit of time there. Obviously, we're unfortunate to have missed out on qualification, but my personal feeling on it is that actually it might be a bit of a blessing in disguise for us. Perhaps the teams that we're playing against in the Europa Conference League are slightly more the type of level that we need to be playing just now, and any European football after Christmas at Celtic Park is welcomed. What is your thoughts on it, given that it's a new tournament format? It's got no prestige whatsoever associated with it, but we're in it.
That's the bottom line. We're in it. So now that we're in it, let's try and win it. You might be able to say to put up, make a fist of it with teams that are in and around your level. So we'll see where we go, but let's compete. Ideally, I would want to have qualified from the group, and our points total was pretty decent, and we made a fist of it against the two top teams in Real Betis and Bayer Leverkusen, but we're just not at that level yet. So, and Alan said we need 3 or 4 windows. Our hands needs 3 or 4 windows to get the squad numbers up, the depth up to be realistically competing against these. I think we're far ahead in terms of progress. Ange mentioned it in terms of the progress we've made in the Europa League. Made significant strides in European football. So why not have a rip-roaring, free-scoring, never-boring tilt at this? The inaugural Conference League. We've got nothing to lose. Go and have a go, but then you say to yourself, well, as long as we can keep players fit, we might be able to have a go. That's our big worry, isn't it? Big concern. But I don't think there's anybody in the Conference League that you should be worried about. Let's put it that way. I think if anything, they should be worried about Celtic, but we'll worry about injuries and stuff and see if we can get a decent team on the park when we play other European opposition. But it's not what we wanted. We wanted to qualify from the group. But if you're asking me in terms of progress, the club's made significant strides in Europe this season and can make further strides by going to the latter stages of the Conference League, which will again boost confidence levels and will be good for the club and good for the team.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we were all thinking any form of European football would be a bonus this season, and we've got it in spades and more to come. With that said, we'll call it a day for today. This has been the Friday Bulletin. If a Friday Bulletin without me is your bag, you'll be in luck next week because I will not be on the show. Lineup still to be confirmed, although I believe, Tony, you'll be back in your usual spot unless otherwise engaged.
I believe so, yeah.
Unless
I'm injured.
Unless you're injured, don't go pulling that hamstring. Alan, you'll be back with us in a few weeks' time as usual. Thank you very much for your contributions today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And for anybody else who's wondering, yes, we are doing the match coverage against Motherwell on Sunday, so we will see you half an hour before kick-off for that as usual. Tony, Alan, thank you very much. Thanks everybody in the comments, and we'll see you on Sunday.